In Rhodesia, the talking has stopped, but the fighting continues. These are men of Rhodesia's Light Infantry. They've been landed by helicopter somewhere along the eastern border. Their target, 30 guerrillas, who are reported hiding in the area. Contact is made. The battle's on. Air support makes all the difference for the government troops. At the end of the encounter, 6 guerrillas lie dead, 3 Rhodesians are wounded. In 4 years of war, the government claims it's killed over 3,000 guerrillas for the loss of around 250 of its own men. Despite its effectiveness, Rhodesia's army does have problems. The main one's the lack of white manpower. So black Rhodesians are now playing an increasingly important part. Black troops make up half Rhodesia's regular army, and they're all volunteers. At this centre, recruitment of black trainees has gone up from 30 to 400 over the last 5 years. These men earn twice the average African wage, and as volunteers, they even get slightly more than white conscripts. But since black unemployment is high, even the government admits their motives may have more to do with money than the cause. Most are still in non-combat roles, such as drivers or engineers, but they are taught to use arms. Training like this could be useful to the guerrillas, so black recruits are never dismissed, even if they're not up to standard. At the moment, all of them go to considerable lengths to prove themselves. The government claims it's not worried about their loyalty, but it does admit guerrillas have tried to lower their morale by threatening their families and urging them to turn their guns against the whites. Nobody knows how they'd react if a guerrilla victory appeared certain. Those white troops Rhodesia has got have to be made as effective as possible. This is one way it's done. These are the Selous Scouts, a mounted infantry unit formed 18 months ago. The aim is to give troops extra mobility in the rough bush areas where guerrillas frequently operate. The unit is named after George Grey, who led a mounted force during the Matabele rebellion at the end of the last century. Many of their tactics are in fact similar to those used in the Boer War. They don't see themselves as cavalry. Once they're where they want to be, they leave their horses and become ordinary infantrymen. The only problem at this demonstration was that the horses proved very difficult to recapture. This is a voluntary unit which appeals to men who know and love horses. Not surprisingly, it contains members from every polo club in Rhodesia. Some Rhodesian army men were against the whole idea of the Scouts at first. They thought it was romantic and impractical. But the unit's proved itself in battle and is now expanding rapidly. We spoke to Commanding Officer Tony Stevens.
We're using the horse as a means of mobility. The rugged terrain that the terrorists use here means that until now we were only able to get in on foot, or prior to the use of horses, or helicopter-borne troops. We've now got the ability to get into areas, stay there for a long time, and find tracks and generally hunt these chaps down.
What sort of contribution are they really making to the war effort?
A very big one. In fact, our effectiveness is growing daily, and normally when we have a contact, we have a big one.
Do you lose many horses?
Hidden in the bush, more Rhodesian Scouts, but these are an entirely different unit. Anti-ambush drill, the conventional way to train soldiers. But these men aren't conventional soldiers, and their training goes well beyond this. For these are the much-feared elite corps known as the Selous Scouts. If the Rhodesian army has a secret weapon, then they are it. Standards are high, and so is the failure rate. 85% drop out after training like this. The Scouts' training camp is on the shores of Lake Kariba, and the best way to approach it is by boat. In normal times, it would be an area for tourists, but the only onlookers now are ones who betray no secrets, even if they never forget them. The Scouts were formed 3 years ago, when it became obvious that the army needed more expert trackers to cope with the guerrilla raids coming across the borders. Like the Greys Scouts, they use horses for greater mobility. Black recruits outnumber whites by about 4 to 1, but whatever their colour, all are volunteers.
And deploy in on extended line. Horse holders will take the horses and move off back this way.
Generally speaking, the level of horsemanship is lower than in the Greys Scouts, at least to begin with. But everything here is done at the double.
And deploy in an extended line there. All right. Very good. Much better.
The essence of their training is bushcraft, and that includes lighting a fire without matches.
In the position where the hot coal is going to fall on top of the smoldering material, and then just start again.
Easy to explain, not always easy to do, even for an expert. The problem in this case was tinder material, elephant dung, that was still wet. The recruits are taught to use everything around them. The baobab tree is an especially good provider. All you need is an axe. The baobab provides food from its leaves and a coffee substitute from its pips. Its inner bark provides not only water, but fibre to make string with. Essential knowledge if your bootlaces have snapped. The aim throughout is self-sufficiency. Rations are provided, but quantities are minimal, and there's usually only one delivery a month. If supplies run out before then, the Scouts simply have to fend for themselves.
Now, there's 2 methods of hanging it up. Some people hang it up by the throat.
They learn to catch their own food, and having caught it, how to skin it.
Backwards to the rear. Generally, it is skinned from the back frontwards. Once you've got to this stage, the skinning operation is very, very easy. And
They also learn how to get the best out of an animal. An impala's stomach holds 2 or 3 pints of water, which could be more important than the meat.
There. Bring them.
Selous Scouts have got to be fit, so an essential companion for the long route marches is a 50-pound sack of rocks.
And get a decent paddy rock, not these pebbles, man. No, it's too big.
This one's here.
Right 50, visa.
The assault course is terrifying and makes absolutely no concessions to mistakes. This sagging rope stretched between two trees takes the men over a 40-foot ravine. If a man falls off, the least he can expect is a broken leg. Several recruits have fallen, and they've all had to be evacuated to Salisbury as casualties. What they're wearing now is all the uniform they're given for the 5-week course. Personal hygiene's discouraged, since it implies a desire for comfort, but recruits do get the occasional bath. This is the second week of the course. 55 out of 80 have already dropped out. Those who survive are learning the bitter truth behind the Scouts' motto: those who die, die. Those who stay behind, stay behind. The Scouts take their name from Frederick Selous, who was killed on active service in East Africa in 1917. He'd survived to the age of 67 because of his skill as a bushman and a tracker. And it's those skills which are the prime needs of the Selous Scouts today. For no matter how well a recruit has done in the fitness tests, if he shows no natural ability as a tracker, then he's out of the course.
Due south, Roger. Roger D.
The unit claims it produces soldiers who are as much at home in the bush as the guerrillas, who have often grown up in it, and their record, they say, backs them up. In 3 years, they claim to have killed over 1,200 guerrillas for the loss of only 10 men. They are the most decorated unit in the Rhodesian army.
Roger, at this stage, the numbers we estimate to 4 to 5. The direction is still due south. Other than that, we have no more information for you. Can we continue the follow-up?
Until now, the Scouts have been surrounded with utmost secrecy. It's a court-martial offence for a Rhodesian army regular even to talk about anything they do. This is the first time they've even taken the wraps off, and the first time their commanding officer, Major Reed Daly, has talked about them on film.
Well, essentially, we like a well-trained conventional soldier to start with. We like a mature chap. We like chaps from about 23, 24 onwards. He must be a volunteer. This is very important to us. And he must pass his selection course, which you have seen part of. It's fairly stringent. He then will do a bush orientation course, and we will test him to see whether he has the natural abilities to make a tracker. If he he could be a real Superman, but if he hasn't got the natural ability that one requires for a tracker, then this chap will not serve with us, because tracking is a natural thing. We merely develop these qualities which he has inherently.
There's a lot of mystery about the Selous Scouts, a lot of mystique about it. I mean, do you consider yourself as an elite crack unit?
I don't like this term elite and crack, quite frankly, because I think it puts the soldiers into the wrong psychological frame of mind. I like to think of us as being efficient at our job and good soldiers. That's my sort of outlook, and this is the outlook I encourage our chaps to have.
You put
The main reason the Scouts are now facing publicity was the killing in February of 7 Roman Catholic missionaries. It was a brutal and apparently senseless killing that shocked blacks and whites alike. Black guerrillas were blamed at first, but there have since been whispered allegations that the Scouts had done it to whip up hatred against the guerrillas. It wasn't a charge the Scouts could suffer in silence.
Initially we treated this as a joke, it was quite a laugh, but it's sort of developed, and it is pretty obvious now that the opposition are using the fact that we do not like publicity, which I will come on to just now. They're using this as a gimmick to explain their own brutalities, but certainly we don't indulge in this. We are soldiers, good, well-disciplined soldiers. We will not indulge in this sort of thing.
But you're very individualistic soldiers, and they move out and spend a lot of time on their own. Is there absolutely, totally convinced there's no chance that some of them could do something like this?
Absolutely no chance. In any case, you know, we move in multiracial groups always. And, you know, people talk about dressing up as tours and so forth and so on. Well, as I've outlined to you just before, it's absolutely impossible for a European to pass off as an African, not in Africa. They'd recognize him no matter whether he painted himself pink, black or blue. They'd recognize him as a European by his very mannerisms at 200 yards.
The effort to contain the guerrillas has at times taken Rhodesian forces across the nation's frontiers. This is the border area with black-ruled Botswana. And this was once a home for 10 people. 2 months ago, say the Botswana authorities, Rhodesian troops came across the border, only 300 meters away, burned down the farmstead and kidnapped the owner. According to the Botswana police, who now patrol the border, it's a deliberate attempt by Rhodesia to depopulate the area in the hope of denying refuge to guerrillas. The Rhodesians deny this, but they have admitted crossing the border in hot pursuit of guerrillas. Botswana, meanwhile, insists it's not allowing guerrillas to operate freely from its territory. Any it finds, it says, are sent back to Zambia. It's a tough job for the paramilitary police, 450 men with nearly 500 miles of border to patrol day and night. And for Botswana's president, Sir Selous Scouts, it's a cruel dilemma. The Rhodesian Railway, which goes right through the country, is a major source of income. He'd like to keep it that way, but he's under increasing pressure to change his policy as the guerrillas step up their search for new borders from which to launch their attacks on Rhodesia. Inside Rhodesia, few people travel by road now unless they really have to. There are two main risks: being ambushed by guerrillas or coming across one of the landmines, which they dig into dirt tracks or cut into the tarmac of main roads. The standard model contains 8 pounds of high explosive and is Russian-made. Detonated by pressure, it can split a car in half. The ordinary vehicle offers no protection whatsoever, which is why farmers and people who must travel the countryside are now equipping their vehicles with rollover bars and armor plating. 1-inch steel plating is welded underneath the body. Below the driver's seat, it's 3 inches thick. Drivers like Chris Morton strap themselves in case the vehicle rolls over on impact. Does it really work?
As far as I know, yes it is. I have been told that there have been virtually no cases of anybody dying or even having serious injuries inside one of these, providing they only hit a standard Russian TM mine.
And what happens if they hit one of the boosters? What are the boosters?
A booster is usually one mine on top of the other, or alternatively it is laced with additional TNT or gelignite. If they hit one of those, it's virtually curtains. There was a case recently where one was completely peeled back. The mine protection ended up right back in the back of the vehicle, and of course then your chances of coming out alive are virtually nil.
Chris Morton bought his protection after seeing this. 2 people were killed. A woman passenger lost both arms and legs. Traffic on major roads now moves in convoys guarded by the army, and regular radio bulletins keep travellers informed.
Connecting with the main Fort Victoria Mtali convoy. Restrictions on hours of travel.
Even within 30 miles of Salisbury, everyone tunes into the reports. A common trick now is to wait for another car to pass and then follow in its tracks. It's just one of several ways in which the war is getting through to ordinary Rhodesians. After 4 years of hostilities, nobody in Rhodesia is pretending that the war doesn't matter anymore. But sometimes it's difficult to tell. Despite the steady toll of casualties, the rapid rise in the defence budget and the cost of living, the atmosphere, on the surface at least, is surprisingly normal. But there's a strong undertone of irony in this event, and especially in the choice of the song, "Don't Say Goodbye to Rhodesia." The truth is that whites are saying goodbye to Rhodesia, and they're doing so in ever-increasing numbers. At the same time, the flow of immigrants into Rhodesia has slowed down. Last year was the worst since UDI in 1965, with a net loss of over 7,000 people. Those who do leave can only take the equivalent of $1,600 US with them. Most of their belongings are sold at auctions.
Unless we start getting some of these bits and pieces into reasonable sized lots. Right, for that lot there, and there's a plastic thing. $1 for the whole lot, $1 how many over there for all those bits and pieces. I'll take $2, I've now got 3, do I hear $4, 5, I've got 6, I'll take 7. $7, good morning, 8, I'll take $9, 9, do I hear $10, now 11, gonna say 11.
Without possessions and without their capital, those whites who do leave know they'll have a hard time to reach the same standard of living elsewhere. But they are going, even old established families like the Pedders. They've been here 21 years, but now they're leaving their house and pleasant garden to go back to Hampshire, England. We asked them why.
Because we have regretfully, after 21 years, come to the conclusion that this country is not going to be, we think, for us as a home in the future. We just think that things have gone too far, too much polarization. Eventually, we believe the country will come out of this. But as colonialists, so-called, or settlers of long standing, we feel that the inevitable new regimes that are going to occur here are going to require the contract-type European to help them out. They want to throw off the vestiges of colonialism of the past.
How many of the friends that you know, how many people that you work with feel much the same way?
People, a very large number of the people that I work with, if they could go, would be making concrete plans at this stage. Not in the main, I would say 90% of cases, not because they want to go, but simply because they feel likewise, for reasons varying from fear of black government as such, to a straightforward belief that the country is not going to be the same as they've known it, and all shades in between. But so many of them, I would say up to 80, perhaps 90%, cannot make that sort of a move now because they're locked in.
How do you mean locked in?
They cannot take enough money to get started elsewhere at the age and stage that they have reached. The younger people, of course, it's different, but the middle-aged and older people feel this in particular, with family responsibilities and so on.
Why don't you stay here?
As the whites leave, Rhodesia's pool of trained personnel dwindles. Without white supervision, industry could well grind to a halt. What's making matters even worse is the ever-increasing burden of military conscription. Blacks are volunteers, but whites and coloureds have to do 84 days of initial training, after which they can be called away at short notice for up to a month, 3 times a year. Many firms have to employ more whites than they would otherwise need. For small businesses, the burden is often intolerable. The case of Rod Well is fairly typical. At the age of 32, he's one of Rhodesia's most highly skilled car mechanics. He's been running this garage for 6 years, and it's now a good business, with a turnover of around 4,000 Rhodesian dollars a month. That's over $6,500 US. Working with him is Alex Batt, who's just qualified after a 5-year apprenticeship. Like Rod, he's liable for call-up, and the combined effect of their enforced absences has made it impossible to continue. Alex is going to Britain, and Rod has sold the business in order to work for someone else.
Yes, because, well, in our trades, you're trying to book so many days ahead. It means you can no longer say to a customer, right, you know, come in next Monday or whatever it is, because you don't know what you're going to be doing. You can be phoned up to take a truck out somewhere in the bush and so on and so forth. You know.
Do you find all this rather a strain?
It is a great mental strain, actually. Very much so.
Running the business side of the garage is Rod's wife, Vi. She sees the move as inevitable.
You're still going to have to close down, sell up.
We will, because 120 working days out of a small business like this, we just can't manage. We just can't manage. I'm sure we won't be able to manage. It's getting increasingly hard to carry on. Financially, we're still fine, but we're trying to look ahead, sort of 6 months ahead, and to project what could happen within the 6 months. We're definitely not getting through the work as quickly as we used to, and it's beginning to affect trade in general. We can't risk the financial security of our children. But, better to close and go and work, have normal jobs. We've started a business from scratch before. If we find ourselves in a position to be able to do it again, then we'll have a go.
Do you think there are a lot of other people in similar position?
Oh, I'm sure there must be. I'm sure there must be. There are small businesses closing down, and if it affects us, we're not unique.
What do you think is the worst thing about it all?
I think the worst thing about it all is not knowing where it's all going to end.
In the case of Rodwell Motors, it's just 3 people. But people with skills Rhodesia now needs more than ever. Multiplied over and over again, it amounts to a serious drain on Rhodesia's white manpower and a blow to Rhodesia's Premier, Ian Smith. Last year, Mr. Smith came to an agreement with US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger because he thought he'd been offered the kind of solution which would keep white capital and know-how in Rhodesia. And when the subsequent talks in Geneva failed, it was because Mr. Smith believed the security arrangements wouldn't enable him to keep white morale high enough to stop the outflow of white settlers. Faced with the current situation on his borders, it's a problem Mr. Smith has yet to solve.